Hello and welcome to another episode of Tom's Gaming World. Thanks very much for joining us. Let's kick off with some pickups. Since last time, I've picked up a few games. Firstly, Ace Combat Assault Horizon Legacy. Very curious to give this a go. Got this about £7 online. It's sealed, which is, brand new copy of the game for under a tenner. Not too bad. Put that there for a sec. The other Dreamcast game pickup is down over there, so we'll see that in a second. So no more pickups on that shelf, but if we scroll down we'll see a little guy peeking out here, and that's Ghostbusters, a video game remastered. So I've been enjoying watching the Ghostbusters films again recently, and that spurred me on to pick this up at a very reasonable price, about £15 I think that cost. As we go down, another bargain. Monster Hunter Stories. Now Argos were selling off a few of the games very cheap, and as per usual, they have some that are really cheap, but they were all sold out. I had the option to get to 3 different Argos stores potentially, or at least order online from them, but none of them had those cheaper games which were selling for about £1.50, £3.99, a few Mario titles in there as well. Again, they had the Bravely Default Special Edition for £3.99, but didn't get any of those games. But I did pick up Monster Hunter Stories for a very reasonable £9.99, and been after this game for a while. Great to find it brand new for a very reasonable price. So the next game is a Dreamcast game. It's Pen Pen Triathlon, the Japanese version. It's a little bit cheaper than the PAL copies, and it's fairly easy to negotiate the menus, and it's fairly easy to get the idea of what to do. But it did take me a moment because it's quite a unique game. Now you may wonder why I've got all the Dreamcast set up here and not connected to this telly, which I'm usually filming off the screen on. Instead, it's connected to this telly. How did that happen? Well, I was able to connect up to the nice big telly because of a little device that I picked up off Amazon. This is the Kaico HDMI adapter for Sega Dreamcast. Now I've seen a few of these HDMI adapters doing the rounds. Most common one you probably heard about is the pound HDMI adapter. I've always heard mixed things about these devices, but the reviews sold me on this one, and I have to say I've not been disappointed. I'll show you a little bit about how easy it is to set up. So basically, into the regular Dreamcast AV port goes this little metal box with a blue light on it. It's very light, it says Dreamcast HDMI on it. This light says Kaico. And here's your HDMI lead. It also comes in the box, so it's nice that they include HDMI, and that would of course go into your telly. In this case it's going into this capture device. So here's a little Pen Pen on the VMU. I love those little visuals they add to the VMU display when you put in certain games. It's really cool. So apologies if this is cropped a little weirdly, but I think it's enough to get the idea. Lovely sound coming off this as well. I hope you can hear that okay. So I was really impressed with this because first of all, the picture is very crisp and bright, and sometimes when you use these converters, I do start to expect the picture to look a bit darker. Now of course, because I'm filming off the TV, this isn't an accurate representation really, we can do the third track, of how this will look on the screen. Of course I've got light coming in, the colours aren't quite right, so but I hope at least you can take away the crispness of this. Right, I'm just going to close the curtain and see if that makes the pictures, colours look a little bit closer to how I see them on the screen. Still looks a little bit weird through the camera. It's a real shame I can't capture the footage for you, but it looks great in person. It really does. And Pen Pen, just talk about the game at the moment, is a very unique triathlon racing game. So in this particular track you start off sliding, and I must say the colours look vibrant and beautiful on the screen. It sounds amazing. I couldn't expect something any better. I know you can get very expensive modifications to actually make the Dreamcast output in HD, but there's no lag. It's providing a 4:3 ratio picture, which is as it should be. Honestly, I can't fault this, and Pen Pen shouldn't even work with it, because it does say as a disclaimer, oh, this is a tough track. This must be the hardest difficulty on this one. This is actually the first track, but I think I'm on a harder version of it. Okay. Oh, don't slide off, Pen Pen. Okay, there we go. So, yeah, Pen Pen's apparently not a VGA compatible game, well, at least according to the case it isn't. And what it states on the product description for this is that it'll only work with VGA compatible games. So I guess Pen Pen secretly is VGA compatible, even though it doesn't say it on the Japanese case. If you've got the PAL copy and you can testify to it running VGA, then do let me know. Anyway, it works is the main thing, and every Dreamcast game I've tested so far works. At Soul Calibur, Virtua Tennis 2, Buggy Heat, and this. I'm just really happy with it. It cost £35, which I think for what it gives you is more than reasonable. That was an appalling start to this race, but yeah, the price is fantastic, I think, for what it does compared to the more expensive alternatives. Yeah, I could have been more happy with it, other than, well, I guess I could, because ideally I'd like the Elgato to recognise it, but that could just be my software being out of date. I am using an old version of Elgato, have been for some time, so I hold out hope that eventually I'll get it to work with it, because it'd be great to start sharing some proper HD resolution footage of Dreamcast games with you. So Pen Pen, not bad for a Dreamcast launch title. A really fun game, I can recommend it, and also recommend, as I say, the I would call it Kaico. Kaico, perhaps? Anyway, enough of that. Let's talk about the other games that I've been playing a bit most recently, and they would be, firstly, this is the big one, Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. Now available, as far as I know, on PS4 and Switch, possibly even Xbox One. I'm not 100% on that. I have the Switch version, and I'm happy with it. I'm so happy to have what I would probably call the ultimate version of the game. It's at least probably a lot better optimized than the N64 game. Actually, I can say it definitely is. Now, the N64 one is the one I played at the time, and played that game to death. I played it so much I felt my cartridge was tearing itself apart at the seams, because I felt the front and back of the cartridge cover had come a little bit apart, and I always thought that was down to the fact that I've been playing it so much. Could be wrong there. I also once had, I would have, if I'd have sent it in, the best time for one of the tracks, because I remember seeing in N64 magazine they were publishing readers' best times for certain tracks in that game, and I did manage to beat the highest, well, the best time for one of the particular tracks in that. So yeah, I consider myself someone who's had a fair bit of experience with Star Wars Episode 1 Racer. You can tell I'm enthusiastic about it. So it was a no-brainer when this port came out. But how is the port? Well, it's widescreen, it's fast. I can only compare it to the N64 version. So I know on formats like the Dreamcast it was more optimised, higher resolution, had FMV cutscenes. Me playing this now is the first time I've seen these FMV cutscenes, and they haven't aged as well as the main game. In fact, when you look at the FMV cutscene and then show it next to what precedes it, which is a nice little flyover like at the beginning of the race, especially apparent in the Butterive Tatooine introduction. The two side by side, I just feel like they should have just stuck with the in-game graphics, because these video parts haven't been sort of optimized, and maybe they didn't have the original assets to do that. So forget about that. That's not important. You can skip those little video bits. They're kind of curious to look at. Jabba looks quite interesting in that particular opening cutscene. So that's something new for me. But what's also new is widescreen. It's in widescreen, and that's great actually. I think for a game like Pod Racer, widescreen really, 16:9, it really works for the game. This feels faster. Of course, in the N64 version, everything's a lot sharper. It's a weird time we live in now, because I'm playing these optimized versions of N64 games. Firstly, I was playing Turok 2 on the Switch, and now playing Episode 1 Racer on the Switch. It's a great time, I think, for these sort of games to come back, and I'd love to see more. Of course, on Xbox One, on Xbox 360, you can play something like Banjo-Kazooie in lovely HD. You can play Ocarina of Time on the 3DS, looking a lot sharper and nicer. So, and of course, games like Final Fantasy VII on the PS4, you can obviously see that in nice sharp resolution. Anyway, off the point. One thing I will stress when you first play this game, it is set up for the Joy-Cons. They're called Joy-Cons, yeah. So it's set up for the Joy-Cons at first, and you accelerate is on the right trigger. Now, someone who's used to playing a N64 game, I think A was accelerate, B air brake, and you would repair your ship with the right shoulder button. So there is a setup to allow you to do that on a classic controller, and funnily enough it's called classic setup. So it's on Joy-Con setup as default, but I would recommend, if you're using a controller like this or a similar classic type controller, you change to the classic setup, because there again, push forward to build your boost up. When that light flashes yellow, press A to boost. Yeah, it's great fun, and it's like, oh, where can I boost? You know, can I risk boosting on this stretch or on this corner? Can I get a little boost in? When I play Pod Racer, as I like to call it, Episode 1 Racer, I like to try and boost as much as I can, and finding little spots where you don't think necessarily be able to get a boost in there and get in is quite satisfying. But don't forget, you know, want your engines to overheat, so press that right shoulder button to repair your pods. Of course, the usual customization is there. The game is exactly the same. This is just a port, basically optimized, I'd say quite a bit, but you will notice that some menu screens and some in-game graphics don't look as sharp as others, and they do look slightly low resolution. It's not a biggie. The title screen is probably the most standout culprit of this sort of low-res image. It's strange that the title screen isn't high-res, but it's beside the point really. When the actual gameplay in the game itself, I think, plays flawlessly. I can't fault it whatsoever. This is the best way to play Episode 1 Racer nowadays, in my opinion, from what I've experienced. And I could harp on about this game so much. I did everything on the game. I got lots of Bulba. This is on the N64. I haven't done it all on the Switch yet, because I only just got it. But I played that game to death, and I love it. And actually, when it came to getting this, what would you call it? Remaster? I guess you can call it a remaster. It's not a remake by any means, but I decided to get it on the Switch because, well, I felt like if I'm going to get Pod Racer again, I might as well get it on the Nintendo console, and most importantly, on a console that is also portable. I've not played it in undocked mode yet, but I can certainly say that the dock mode is fantastic, and I'm having a lot of fun with it all over again. All the customization of the pods, unlocking all the different pod racers, maxing out your stats and all. Oh, it's a real joy to play. And something I noticed on this version that's not in the N64 version is the music seems to play every lap. On the N64, I think it was only the final lap that had music. And that further adds to the experience, because that Episode 1 soundtrack is fantastic. Be able to hear that really gets the blood racing as your pod racing. But it's quite easy to begin with. At least I found it. You know, obviously the amateur league is pretty straightforward, and then the one after that, again, not much of a challenge there. I think in the later ones it's definitely getting a lot more challenging. I think that's a lot of that's down to the difficulty of the tracks later on, but they get longer and longer as the game progresses. But I love all the characters in Pod Racer 2. It's one of the main draws for me, all the aliens that you can play as. My favourite being Bullseye Navoir. He's a fun guy who I played a lot of in the N64 version. There you go, I can't stop talking about Pod Racer. I'm going to have to stop now because I need to just briefly mention Grid Autosport, that's it, for the Switch, which really feels like a game that's been tailored towards the Switch. Although not originally a Switch game, there's been a lot of attention put into this port, I think, and it feels like it was made for the console. The graphics are nice, it's a good game. I'd like the extra option of giving your teammate commands when you're racing. For example, you can tell them to push forward or hold their position, or have more of an aggressive driving style and attack the other drivers, which I'm not sure what means exactly. If they crash into them or something, that's not quite right, but usually when I ask them to do that they start getting pushed back in the pack. Anyway, so that's the unique thing about Grid Autosport. It's also unique just that it's on the Switch, because there aren't really any other games quite as in-depth, driving games at least, as in-depth as Grid Autosport. Of course, previously we talked about Gear Club, and Gear Club's good, but the depth within Autosport is a lot bigger, a lot greater, shall I say. One thing you notice about the Switch version is that the insides of the cars, the interiors, haven't got a lot of detail on them, but you can choose to, if you want to, download extra content for free that will give you more textures, high resolution inside of the car. So if you like driving like that, I would suggest that download those extra files, and it makes the space the game takes up on your Switch more, of course, but it is a little underwhelming if you do choose to drive in that perspective, because you can't really see the beautiful graphics around you very well, or the car. Actually, the cars look really good in this game too, so I like playing outside of the car. It's really fun. It's not been too difficult so far. I've done a bit of touring cars, a bit of street racing, but these are the earlier segments of the game, so not too tricky. I've been doing quite well. As I say, I like racing with another teammate, and I kind of root for them to get a little bit higher up in the standings at the end of the race. You can do things like practice and qualifying as well, or just jump straight into the races, and you can choose between disciplines. As I say, I've done touring cars and street racing so far, but there are others on offer, so it's a fairly robust game that, yeah, you're not going to be finished with it quickly. There's definitely a lot to play there, and the core gameplay is very enjoyable. So yeah, wow, my mouth is getting dry now. I've spoken so much, but thanks for listening. That's the end of the episode. I hope you've enjoyed it. I talked about a few things, and until I see you again for another episode of Tom's Gaming World, let me know what you think first of all. If you have any comments on what I've talked about, comment below, like the video if you like it, and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. But all that's left for me to say is thanks again for watching, goodbye, and game on.